In this tutorial, we're going to take a quick look at how to create some blend shapes in ZBrush. Now, there are a variety of different ways to do this. In fact, ZBrush does have a built-in Z plugin for creating blend shapes and directly sending them to Maya. Now, I do want to point out that I'm going to be doing it a slightly different way, although a lot of the same parts can be done in both of our workflows. In fact, you can even see that you can create layers and such with the Blend Shapes plugin. I'm going to be doing it kind of, I guess, a little bit more where I control the whole thing instead of bringing it into Maya through the built-in way. I like to be able to exert the control. Sometimes having the automated version is nice, but I like to know that I'm in control of everything. So I do have a customized space here, as you might notice. This is not what you would see normally in ZBrush in terms of the interface. That's one of the cool things about ZBrush is the ability to change that around. I've basically put a bunch of the tools that I use all the time at my fingertips. So I'm going to show you first where to find those tools, and then I will continue to use the ones that I use over and over and over again. So this is my head. This sculpt goes all the way up to about 18 million polygons. It's got seven subdivision levels to it. I am presently at subdivision level 3. If I take this down to a subdivision level 1, this was a head that was originally exported at the lowest polygon level from the software Make Human, which was kind of the starting point to make it quicker for me to actually create this head. And so that lowest point is about 4,300 polygons, and it goes all the way up to about 18 million polygons. So where I'm working from in Maya is at the equivalent of my level 3 subdivision. And that's where I would encourage you to work from if you have a suitably powerful enough computer and you're looking for something that's got a lot of realism to it. And this is obviously more of working in the high realism versus stylization kind of categories of creating a character. So at my level 3, we're looking at somewhere around 70,000 polygons. Somewhere in that territory for you would work the same. Okay, and I just want to point out here for, if you're new to seeing what I'm doing here, that one of the reasons why I like working with Make Human is that it does a good job automatically creating the good topology for my model. So there's very nice edge flows there. And this is just sort of what the model looks like all around in case that matters to you in your workflow. So let me turn off polyframe. Okay, so for me to create the blend shapes, I need to work with my layers, because this is going to be my base sculpt, and all of the blend shapes are going to be based on this. So they're all going to work from this sculpt. And they're all going to be based on the level 3 subdivision. So since I do have more polygons and more subdivisions than just level 3, in order for me to create a new layer inside of ZBrush, I have to be at my highest subdivision level that I've created. And in order to do that, I'm just going to slide my subdivision level slider in the geometry section of the tool palette up to level 7 in my case. Like I said, that's just 18 million polygons. It's very smooth. You'll notice that in this sculpt, at that highest level, while I have some details like some wrinkles under the eyes and just basic details in general, I haven't gone in and applied directly to my model things like skin pores and those kinds of fine details. So I left those on separate layers. So if I come down into the layers section here, you'll see that I have already created a bunch of different layers for my mesh, including things like the skin pores and different noise on the face and just the skin textures in general. But what I'm particularly interested in is creating the different blend shapes. So for instance, if I just took a really easy one to see, something like mouth stretch, for instance. Each one of these layers is kind of like a layer in Photoshop, except instead of turning on and off bitmap data, you're turning on and off sculpting data. And they work kind of the same where you can turn the visibility on and off. It's this little very grayed out eyeball icon right here. So if I click on that, what it does is it takes my base sculpt, which sits at this layer up here. The very first layer I created, I just called base, and I just left it as what I had already sculpted, and then I created another layer, and I then named that something else, in this case pores. And so I just worked from there and always left the very first layer as the base sculpt. And so when I have a layer like mouth stretch, I can turn on the visibility of that layer to see what were the changes that I made. Now I can also click on this round icon right next to it, which is record. And what that means is that any changes that I make now to the mesh will be recorded as a change on this layer, will be basically added to mouth stretch. And then I turn record off, and now I'm no longer affecting that layer. Sometimes what I find is that actually when you click on the record button, it doesn't always turn off easily. So you might have to click it a couple times. Sometimes clicking it toward the top is a little bit more accurate. And then if I want to turn off the contribution of that layer altogether, I can just turn off the eyeball icon. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here. You'll see that I have quite a few layers that I've created so far. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. So to create a new layer, I click on this button right here. And as soon as I do that, it comes in as untitled layer. If I want to change the name of this, I'm going to click on the name button right here. And we're going to call this our example layer right now. Now I don't really have a blend shape in mind that I want to create here. I'm just going to make some changes to the face and we'll play around with that. And it'll be sufficient enough for our purposes. So for the example layer, as soon as I create it, you'll notice that record is already enabled. So that's kind of convenient. And anything that I make as a change here will now be recorded. Now, of course, for most purposes, I don't want to be doing any large-scale changes at such a high level of subdivision. And I really want to bring this down to something like level 3, level 2, or level 3, depending on the nature of the change that I'm making. So let's just say that I wanted to go in and maybe open up the lower lip a little bit. And while I do this, I'll just show you another little trick in case you're not familiar with this. As you might figure out as you try to do this, if you just try to use the move tool to lower the lips, it doesn't do a very good job because it grabs both the bottom and the top lips at the same time. So we need a way to allow it so that it doesn't do that. That we can grab them separately. There is another brush called the Move Topological brush, that one right there, which adheres to topology and does a pretty good job. You'll notice that I'm able to separate the lips there a little bit better. But even with that, I still grab that top lip a little bit. It's not 100% perfect. So if I step back a couple times there, all right. So what I'm going to do is I can still work with the Move Topological brush, that's fine. In fact, just turning on the Move brush right there and then turning on the Topological masking, which can be found under the brush was it modifiers or auto masking? I forget exactly where it is. It's one of those things that I don't normally have well, I should say in the default interface, I don't think that this is normally revealed. It's this little button right here, Topological, and I just have it in my interface right there. It'll do the same thing, or you can search for the Move Topological brush in your brush palette. All right, so here's my way of working around this. It's just to create a little mask. And if I want to create a mask that's going to separate the top and the bottom lips, I'm going to actually go into the Move tool, and then I'm going to hold down the Control button, and somewhere near the corner of the lips, hold down Control and click and drag out my Move tool and sort of orient it in different directions. Now, one of the things that I notice is I don't have at the moment, let's go undo, I don't at the moment have symmetry on. So I'm going to press X to enable symmetry across the X-axis. So let's just make sure that that's on first. That way I get the same result on either side here. So I'll hold down Control again, click and drag, and eventually, if I keep moving this thing around, I will find a result where the mask separates the bottom lip from the top lip. I don't really need to worry about what's going on over here, but what this is doing is it's trying to grab along the topology and the edge flow of our overall mesh. Now this is masked off the bottom lip, and really I want it to be the other way around. I want to mask off the top lip, so I'm just going to hold down Control and just click over here in the negative space, right, and that inverts the mask. So I'll go up to the Draw option now, and I have Move Topological enabled. And I'm just going to I'll make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'll pull down this lip a little bit, right? And this is not meant to be any good shape, it's just for the sake of example, right? And that's probably enough for the sake of example. I'll just kind of get rid of the mask there, and then I'll just smooth this out. Not a very good blend shape, but like I said, it works for our purposes here, for the sake of example. And so as soon as I do that, now if I'm saying, hey, look, I'm happy with my blend shape, then I want to store it. And in order to be able to do anything with the layers again, I need to make sure that I'm back up at my maximum subdivision level. So I'm going to take my subdivisions back up to level 7 here. And eventually this will kick back in as soon as ZBrush updates. And now I could turn off record. Okay, so that would give me now saved out a blend shape. And I could turn that on or off. And you see that that's what we just created. So in the next tutorial, we're going to take a quick look at how we can separate a blend shape from one side to the other to create a left side version and a right side version of it. See you then.